Guys, welcome to the I Love CVille Show. It's good to be with you on a gorgeous Wednesday. Thank you kindly for joining us. My name is Jerry Miller. Fantastic program lined up for you. If you like housing, if you like talk about the economy, if you like talk about development, talk about the city of Charlottesville, the downtown mall, Crozet, Virginia, this show is for you. Greg Slater in the house, Nest Realty. Greg Slater in the house from Blue Ridge Creamery.
Crozet Creamery.
Crozet Creamery, fantastic ice cream joint in Piedmont Place that my wife, my son, and I visited a couple weekends ago, thanks to him. We'll spotlight Old Trail. We'll talk about what's happening in Crozet Plaza, the evolution of condos in Charlottesville and Albemarle County, Hessian Hills, the villas at Southern Ridge, Barracks West. We will talk about, he was on the ground floor of all that. We've also welcomed a very smart individual in Rory Stolzenberg to the program. He's a planning commissioner. He's an entrepreneur. He's a man about town. You may see him on a Lime scooter from time to time. Knows the downtown mall inside and out. We'll spotlight what's happening with John Dewberry's project, whether it's the Landmark Hotel, the Dewberry Hotel, the Larimore Hotel, whatever the hell it's called right now. We'll talk about that with the planning commissioner. Before we go anywhere, let's thank one of the fantastic businesses that make the show possible. We are their proud advertising agency of record, and it's Intrastate Pest and Service Companies. I don't know if you know this, but this company started in 1969 with the first generation. It was one man and one truck. His name was Mr. Wells. In 1969, he would service his first home successfully and then find the closest payphone and then call his second customer and say, may I go to your home now? Today, Intrastate Pest and Service Companies is almost 100 employees. The headquarters right around the corner from Bodo's Bagels on Harris, an office in Richmond, an office in the Shenandoah Valley, and guys, a Commonwealth-wide footprint. We will also give some love to the good doctor. He happens to be Greg's chiropractor as well.
True
Scott
story.
Wagner of Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine. We are their proud ad agency of record as well.
Intrastate is the primary company I use for our needs like that in the real estate world as well.
I love that, and I love when the guests jump in on the intro right there. Right? Intrastate and Dr. Wagner, thank you for being a part of the show. Let's go to the studio, Cam. Let's just have some fun right now. These guys have the gift of gab, and they love our community. Greg Slater here, Rory Stolzenberg here. We'll start open-ended, and why don't we start with what's going on with your life? How are things going? How are you passing the day? And then we'll get into specifics. First one for you, Greg.
Oh, well, we just got my son out of 8th grade. It's summertime, right? We get a little break in real estate world after Memorial Day. People start taking vacations because we're getting out of the hectic spring market. And so the pace of play slows down a little bit, and we start doing family stuff. And, we'll go to the OBX like we do every year pretty soon. I'm looking forward to that.
I love it. I love this guy, Bellamy Brown, the council candidate is watching now. Tori Heavner says hello to Rory Stolzenberg. I want to congratulate him, and I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn here. A gig with Lumen, huh? Can we talk about that?
Yeah. I've been working there since last August, but I've decided to go full time and stop wasting half my time with planning things and appearances on your show. So gonna earn a living now, a real living, and I will no longer be a cost burden renter. I'm gonna, have enough salary to comfortably pay for my rent. So that'll be a nice change too.
Fantastic. So talk to us about Lumen. What's going on over there?
It's a really cool company. So we're building a smart circuit breaker panel, or addition to your circuit breaker panel, that can measure and control the usage on each of your circuits. So it both helps to understand your electricity consumption and help to shift your consumption to times when you'll be using more green electricity, especially your own self-generated green electricity. And if you have a solar plus battery setup, it really makes that a much more powerful system.
I love it. We'll follow that closely. Welcome Amy Wicks-Horn. Welcome some folks in City Hall, kind enough to join us on the program right now. All right, let's get into some hot topics. I'd like to start with, and why don't we throw it to the planning commissioner, and then you and I banter back and forth with the news that was reported over the weekend by Nolan Stout of the Charlottesville Daily Progress, who had a story. Ray Cadell, hello, thank you for joining us. And the story was about the Dewberry and John Dewberry, the now infamous developer from Atlanta, Georgia, that Bloomberg has dubbed the Emperor of Empty Lots. We've pivoted that brand to the extorting Emperor of Empty Lots in John Dewberry. And he has a change on his website, Rory, where the Dewberry Hotel, now not under the hotel classification, but now potentially under the apartment condo type classification on his website. I will get out of the way. The show is yours.
Yep. So that's pretty much the sum of the change. Renamed it and moved it to a different page in his website. So I'm inclined to agree with you that it's mostly hot air. But if he does think that it's about to move, then that's great to hear. I happen to look directly at the landmark out of my office window at Lumen. So I would love to see it not look like that. But it's definitely not on the list of my top concerns for the city.
And let's get the picture on screen now, if we could, from the Dewberry. I'm going to get you in the mix here very shortly. You kind of educated me. I follow you on Twitter, and I would encourage you guys to follow Rory on Twitter, follow him on Facebook. He's active on both platforms, more active on Twitter, undoubtedly. Why is it just BS, do you think, a potential ruse, smoke and mirrors, of why this is not a good fit for apartments or condos?
Yeah, so the big issue in terms of just an internal perspective from his point of view is that, and there's some articles in like CVille Weekly back in the day when the landmark first went under about this, but the whole hotel is not laid out to be apartments, let alone luxury apartments. Normally, if in a luxury apartment building, you'd have ceiling heights that are like 10 feet at least. These are 8 feet at best. It's 9 feet slab to slab, and then you need to fit in the ductwork and equipment to make it a finished place instead of an open air concrete rainforest deal. So they tried to squeeze in more floors, essentially is what happens. They've got 11 floors there because they've got a kind of water treat basement level and they've got a penthouse level. So they kind of shrunk the ceiling heights to make it work right to the level of where it would be okay, maybe for a high-end hotel chain, maybe more mid-tier hotel. But in practice, probably can't be comfortable apartments. Plus, the whole thing is laid out to be individual rooms, so they might need to do some work to lay it out to be larger spaces.
I want to throw it to you, and then I have some specifics for you, Greg. I mean, some things that I'm concerned about are, for 10 plus years, this structure's been exposed to the elements. I think if you're a developer, you know a lot more about this than we do. You're going to make a hell of a lot more money on 450 a night individual hotel rooms than potentially 8 apartments or condos, especially in a place like the downtown mall. I'll get out of the way. Your thoughts on the topic in general?
Sure. Yeah, the structure is obviously going to have problems that were unforeseen sitting there so long, and somebody will have to figure that out. But yeah, when you think about this town, I would say the demand for hotels, particularly in a college town, is relatively high.
Especially in the mall.
Especially on the mall, especially during the football season and weddings and all these other things, and the tourism that occurs here. Maybe you could make an argument there's space for more high-end condos because a lot of those projects don't come to fruition and they seem to have demand for them.
Keith Woodard's project, West 2nd Street, is an example.
Right, exactly. So, I'm a little, as a realtor who watches the market as closely as I do, C&O Row was amazing to us, right? They went down there and started building row homes over $1 million, and they sold out pretty quickly.
Corin's project.
Yeah, so you can't measure demand at the higher end of the market close to downtown because there's never been the supply to fulfill all of it. So it's a little bit undetermined. So, yeah, a hotel would make some sense. I'm sure that's why they started the conversation. This changing of information on the website's peculiar at a minimum. It sounds like to me at the end of the day there is just no real information about what could happen or a timeline with this particular building. So
I totally agree. And I think it's smoke and mirrors to give him more runway or to lure the haters from hating on a hotel that hasn't been developed to a project that could be dangling down the road. Clearly, one thing that's happened, throw it to you, Rory, a rebranding. I think the rebranding was necessary. You pointed something to us off air about why the rebranding may be necessary.
Yeah, personally, I think that's what's going on here. That he previously called this the Dewberry Hotel, and this ridiculous monstrosity is associated with his personal name, which I think led the community to, once we started calling it that, use it to denigrate him, as he deserves. And so I think I pointed this out, I think last time I was on the show. If you go Google Dewberry Charlottesville or just go to dewberrycharlottesville.com, there's a fantastic website, very good description of the upcoming hotel that, arguably if you're John Dewberry, you don't love being on the internet. So in my opinion, this whole thing is a ruse so that he can change it to someone else's name and and not have people laughing at him directly. To push back a little bit on the structural concerns, my understanding is that in 2017, when they were negotiating that performance agreement, part of those negotiations did involve a structural assessment. And
But that was his handpicked guy, though.
Probably true.
Yeah, yeah.
Though, if I'm building a 10-story building, I probably wouldn't pick the guy who will tell me it'll stay up when it's going to collapse.
That's
as soon
fair.
As I put some more stuff in it.
That's fair.
But I mean, that doesn't change the fact that it was already in 2000, granted it was 2009, but it was already spiraling in costs and probably not going to work as a viable hotel concept. So unless they figured out a way to build it cheaper, especially with all the new hotels that have been built around here, even near downtown, like the Home 2, it's potentially soaked up some of that extra demand, though of course there's always demand for hotels.
Yeah, let me throw this to you. Richard Allen Fox, welcome to the program. Richard Fox, one-time ran for delegate of Roslyn Farm. Thank you kindly for joining us right now. Give it a like, give it a share on any of the pages you're watching. Denise Postlewhite is watching at Kilwins right now. Welcome, Denise. Thank you for joining us on the program. Richard Fox says, Rory is a wealth of knowledge on all things CVille zoning planning related. You're getting props right now.
Thanks.
Keith also says, Rory is dead on and spot on. One cannot convert the structure to condos for the reasons he outlined. Thank you, gentlemen, for that. If you have a comment that you'd like to relay to either Greg or Rory, I'm happy to. I want to talk about something that you touched on, and this is up your alley with downtown real estate. You had Baldwin's development, Baldwin's project on Water Street, Core's project.
Okay.
That had success. There's still some vacancy there across from the C&O restaurant. Then you had the C&O row houses that are like 3-level townhomes.
4 in some cases.
4-level townhomes that are now selling again. Literally, I just saw on the market where another one traded for a second time. Following the MLS really closely. These are trading at north of $1 million. Because of their location, because of the fixtures, the finishes, mainly because of the location. Talk to us about real estate downtown and how it's not a true barometer, perhaps, of real estate in the county and the city. And talk to us about what your thoughts were with West 2nd Street, Keith Woodard's project, and what could have happened there as well, had things have played out the right way.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
But in general, when we talk about the city, people want to live in the city. It starts with a conversation of what they want to be close to. And for many, that's the downtown mall. And I often explain to them, if you can walk to the downtown mall, things are pretty expensive. From there, as you fan out, you get these little pocket neighborhoods. We all know the popularity of Belmont and what happens to housing there. It's some of the oldest inventory in the city, and people are turning those things over and getting a pretty penny for them. And if that's what lifestyle you're into at that phase of your life, it's great. I sold one of the row homes at C&O Row. I was talking to one of the sales rep for that builder actually yesterday. They sold all those homes. I've seen one resale. I guess the second one's on the market now. I hadn't noticed. But they have another phase of townhomes there, and they're not starting them until I guess they have a block of 6. They need to sell 2 of them. They're so big and so expensive, you just can't start building them. You got to sell a few of them first. So there's a little bit more demand to be squeezed out of the market there. But in general, the city market's hard to chase. You have to look at it in the different price points because in some places supply is so constricted, it's hard to really measure what's going on. Oftentimes I work with a buyer in one of those very competitive segments of the market, and we jump in there. We know in 24 hours they're going to have more than one offer, and the conversation turns to, here's what their price is, here's what I think it's worth. I wouldn't be surprised that somebody else is going to pay more than that. They want it more. And sometimes when you're a buyer and you miss out on those properties, maybe you miss 2 or 3, when you're the first time up and you miss, I tell them eventually you're going to be that 4th or 5th person on your 4th or 5th property, and then you're going to realize maybe you have to stretch a little bit to see how bad you really want something. So sometimes there's people that are willing to pay more for something because they plan on owning it for so long. And that distorts the market a little bit too, even when the comps don't support some of these values we see. Otherwise, projects, it's disappointing to see a developer go through what they went through to work with the city for so long and not be successsull.
You're talking about West 2nd.
Yes, and I don't know a lot about it. I know
He knows some about it.
I know the vitals. I know there's a lot of investment made by that developer.
$1.2 million plus.
And it didn't come to fruition. And look, development is a high risk and not always high reward proposition. it's a tough business to be in. And even with my involvement on the affordable housing side and doing business, I work with builders that build in the city and developers that develop in the city, like at Lachlan Hill and other places. Most of those folks would tell you it's pretty difficult to do business in the city zoning department, and the city getting building permits and COs and all the things that go into that is quite difficult. It adds time, and often it adds cost.
Is exactly right. And turn the whole Dewberry thing into the first sizzle reel, and this is the start of the second sizzle reel about building and living and owning in the city. That was on point. Oliver Kuttner is a good example of how difficult it is to work in the city. He's taken his money and his vision to Lynchburg, and he's making Lynchburg's downtown a reality as opposed to Charlottesville. I think he really got burned when Kathy Galvin and City Council, with the micro apartments that he was trying to do downtown in that glass warehouse district, did not come to fruition. I think now in retrospect, and I'm going to get out of your way, anything he covered you can go at, anything I'm talking about you go at. I think in retrospect now those micro apartments would have been amazing for downtown Charlottesville because it would have given us the density we want. And from a millennial standpoint, we are not spending as much time in our apartments, so it's not like we need this palatial place to live. We want to experience life outside of our area, and that's downtown Charlottesville. Anywhere you want, yeah.
Can I get a laptop here in front of me?
Yeah,
I'm feeling a little insecure as a Gen Xer with these two millennials multitasking while we interview. I've got a clipboard with ratty paper on it.
And he's got a pen. You got a pen.
I'm sorry.
Anywhere you want to go on any of these topics, Rory, educate us.
Turns out I don't actually know anything. I can just Google things real fast. That's where I get facts from. But no, I think that's a really great point about the risk of development in the city. I think it's critical that we set clear expectations and standards, and we know what we want as a city. So, when we're approving things like C&O Row, which are multi-million-dollar, 4-story buildings, each of which, they're not even really row houses, right? They just look like it. And I think they look great, honestly. I just wish it was legal to split one of those up into 4 or 6 apartments and rent them out individually, which honestly, 4 or 6 renters band together, or, condo buyers might very well be able to outbid those, super rich millionaires who are trying to buy these giant apartments or these giant houses, standalone detached houses near downtown. They might be able to outbid them together, but we make it illegal and kind of rig the system in favor of the people who are only going to be occupying it with one family.
Nicole Scrow, the attorney turned builder, is watching right now. Andre Xavier, the owner of CVille Hop-On Tours, is watching right now. You're getting props from Chip Royer.
Local attorney.
Yeah, always great advice from Greg Slater. Chip is giving you some props right now. Let's have this discussion here. He's very much in favor of density. He's very much in favor of, and I don't want to assume here, perhaps a massive change of the zoning. Was it like 53 to 55%, and you have the exact numbers, of city property in a 10.27 square mile area is zoned R1, which is single family detached. Talk to us about that, how that needs to change, your whole take on this, and then let's play some devil's advocate here.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that R1 currently means detached homes only, but it hasn't always meant that, right? It didn't mean it until 1964, and even then it was a very small percentage of the land in the city. It wasn't until 1991 that it became such a large, like 55% of the zoned land in our city. So I think the general idea with reforms that we'd like to implement to our residential zones in general is to just kind of bump up the allowable density a little bit, what we call gentle density or missing middle. Really, this is the very lowest end of missing middle, where, right now it only legally allows single-family detached houses, but that's not really what's there. If you look at a map of use types in the city, because 88% of our homes were built before 1991, in almost every neighborhood, of the city, there are duplexes sprinkled throughout. There's ADUs everywhere. Many have triplexes or even small apartment buildings sprinkled in there. And those are all non-conforming, which means that they'd be illegal to build today, but we can't, down zone and tell you need to tear down your building.
They've been grandfathered in. Is that the right terminology?
That's right, but we don't like to use the word grandfathered anymore.
Why is that?
The origin of the word is kind of racist
didn't know
voting laws, where
Okay.
if your grandfather was allowed to vote, now you're allowed to vote.
Had no idea about that.
never heard that either.
ADUs is an acronym for accessory dwelling unit. And an accessory dwelling unit example could be maybe a cottage in a backyard that could be rented to supplement the income needed to cover a mortgage. Jump in here on this discussion.
Well, it's a pretty popular topic among buyers. I work with a lot of people that are looking at properties and trying to figure out how to create that supplemental income due to the affordability challenges in the market, right down to the point, you take most of what I deal with is in the county, though, because the people get the idea they can have a room in their house and Airbnb it, right? I'm like, there's a difference between a tenant and a roommate, right? It's called a locked door.
Yeah.
And I don't think everybody has always thought about the risk of bringing someone in and renting a portion of their house when it's not set up to be that way. But people are trying to skirt the boundaries of what they can do there legally. I give you an example. I sold a townhome in Pavilions at Pantops right there. This is Albemarle County, and this is R1. They have no rights.
Across from the giant guys.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
nothing about the HOA or the zoning allows you to rent anything there, but somebody had set their basement up as an apartment, and people fought over that thing. And I told my client, you can buy this, but someone could stop you from using it the way they set it up. Technically, it's an in-law suite, and it's. I'm not sure you want to go down that road.
How does that get stopped? Is it the HOA, the association would have to start a lawsuit?
Well, it depends. It's self-policed, right? If nobody reports it, look, Old Trail, where I live, there are people creating apartments there, right? They're allowed to, but you have to be an owner-occupant to access that apartment. That's a legal rental. But the HOA prevents in the covenants how many, the length of term, minimum length of term for rentals in there. So you can't rent anything by the night in there, but I know people are doing it. And if you're not a nuisance and it's not being reported, it just happens. So what the real mechanism is to stop these things hasn't really been vetted until someone takes someone down that road.
Yeah, and I know the county just passed some homestay ordinances, I think mirroring or similar to the cities. But it's one thing when it's an HOA and it's a private contractual agreement between homeowners, at the time their properties were built, and when it's the government that's coming in and saying you're not allowed to have an in-law apartment. And I think in this case, I'm really thinking about ADUs, not as Airbnbs, but as just rented out in-law apartments, right? And I think they're an important source of extra housing in our city, but we already have a lot of them, right? We have well over 800 ADUs. It's almost 20% of our housing stock inside the city.
I did not know that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, the vast majority were non-conforming before we passed our ADU laws in the early 90s. A lot of them are even, servants' quarters from like olden times. We had a Portland State University accelerator program that's working with Charlottesville, Portland, and a couple other cities, and they're all comparing notes on ADU programs. And you tell them how many ADUs we have here, and they're utterly shocked. They have less than 1% of their housing stock as ADUs. They're just getting into this reform. I think there are important reforms that we can do to ADUs. I think we should remove the owner occupancy requirement. I think we need to remove the requirement that they be less than 40% of the size of your primary dwelling. And I think we need to remove the ordinance that says that you need to kind of hide them. You can't have a door or stairs visible from the street. You need to pretend that you're a single family house without an in-law apartment. But all of those reforms are really at the margin. I don't think they're going to produce hundreds and hundreds of more ADUs than we previously or otherwise would have gotten.
I'm going to throw something in there. You jump in. So the guidelines or the barometers of what accessory dwelling units could be, are they in place to maintain what is perceived to be the authenticity and the integrity of the neighborhood, and B, just talk to me about the one that you mentioned that it has to be 40% or less than the size of the home. Is that strictly to hide the ADU? To disguise or mask the ADU?
I think you're right that in general they're all to pretend that they don't exist, right? Like
Okay.
the whole appeal of ADUs is that it allows extra people and renters while pretending that we don't have renters near us, right? I think the 40% requirement is more in order to say that it's specifically a subsidiary or subservient, apartment within the house, and it's not, half the house. The house can't be divided equally. It needs to be a small portion of your house. And you are, with that owner occupancy requirement, you're allowed to live in the ADU and rent out the main house. I don't know how many people do that, but it's definitely an option for people trying to age in place. Overall, I mean, the intent of the ordinance, I think, is pretty clear.
What do you think?
Well, in the newer communities, there were always affordable proffers in the affordable housing proffers in the rezoning that they were trying to meet. What happens is the land's still too expensive to achieve those goals. And I can cite examples from the past. Belvedere is an example. Old Trail is an example. You know, Old Trail had a variety of lots that were put up as proffered lots. They were marketed on paper for 30, 60, 90 days, whatever the proffer was. Nothing happens to them, then they convert to the fair market value. And as in the new part of Old Trail that they've rezoned, they've added the right to create the ADUs. And I think it's much is done there to create an affordable rental as it is to create additional income for a homeowner. And so they're just still trying to attack the affordable occupancy problem we have in some of these neighborhoods. Because personally, I live in Old Trail, and I find it disheartening that we've never built anything affordable that a single school teacher across the street could live and walk to work.
What's the starting point of a single family detached in Old Trail?
Right now today,
Yeah.
5.25.
Damn.
On the market. There are some single family, there's a small inventory of single family detached homes in Old Trail that will come in the 4s. I don't think there's any in the 3s. We do have some 900, 1100, very few. Matter of fact,
The townhomes?
the lots that were designed to meet the affordable housing proffers that flushed through the proffer were end up developed by builders and became rentals, or investors and became rentals. So we have like maybe a dozen one-bedroom townhomes that are 900 square feet. We have maybe another dozen that are two-bedroom at about 1,200 square feet, and they trade in the 180 to 250 range, maybe 200 to 250 range now. And so there's very small inventory there that starts to get into that affordable range.
So 180 to 250 range on that townhome. You're probably looking at a 30-year fixed at 4.5% of maybe 1,100 a month with an HOA in the neighborhood of what, 200 a month?
We're at 200 a quarter.
So you're looking at maybe 1,300 to 1,400 a month in overhead?
You're right.
Yeah.
And what kind of square footage are you getting on those detached houses at 5.25?
Well, I'll give you an example. I have a listing right now that's 560. It's 2,000. It's only 1 year old. It's 2,000 square feet, built by a high-end custom builder. It's got a finished basement with a 4th bedroom, a rec room, and a full bath. So it's 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths. But they have an apartment, the detached garage behind it. Now it's on a sliver. It's on 1/10 of an acre, right? This is new urbanism. The homes are 10 feet apart. But these folks have, get this, grandparents that have grandkids. They live in Florida. Their grandkids are in Old Trail. They don't want to live here. They want a guaranteed place to stay for 1 to 2 weeks at a time. So they pay the owner of this house $8,000 a year just to have a key to that place and come when they want to.
Wow.
They don't pay them by the month. They just wrote them a check for the whole year, and we'll give you an email when we're coming, but we'll never be here more than 2 weeks a month. And that's a nice bonus for that homeowner. But that's an example there. But it ranges. You know, you got basements and non-basements, and Old Trail's complicated because you have a lot range and lot type, and it's truly, I tell people, it's like a small town. Every year, someone will spend under $200,000 to live there, and over $1 million, and everything in between.
What are you thinking about this, Rory?
Yep. I mean, I think that's a good example, and in a lot of the houses we see in the city especially are great examples of places where they had to build they had to build a single-family detached house by right because that's all that was available, and then it ends up being large because they build to the allowed building envelope, because of course you're going to get paid per square foot roughly, so you're going to build as much as you can to make the most profit. And I think it's a great example of, you could split that 2,000 plus square foot apartment or home into a duplex, right? Even a duplex plus that garage apartment. And you could potentially have, or just over half the price of that 5.25 down to, high 200s, low 300s. And I'm not saying that anyone should have to do this if they don't want to, but just that they should have the option, because many people do want to buy smaller homes or attached homes, or, homes near the city and where people want to be. So to make it illegal for people to build duplexes and triplexes and fourplexes is to say that the type of people who will buy that sort of home, shouldn't be allowed around here.
Well, there is a conversation. There is, they develop Old Trail block by block, right? In some cases, they don't know what these blocks are going to be. They want to respond to demand. But there's a parcel we've been talking about for probably 5 years where they talk about 2/2 and multifamily. And, the development manager for Old Trail now is from not in our market. They when after the recession and they made a change, they went to a guy from Vegas or Nevada. And he has some ideas that we've never seen around here. They haven't got to the point where the builders, they still have to sell those lots and have somebody make that investment to build them. So they haven't quite gotten over the hump. And so that parcel's kind of on the back burner while they develop other sections. So we'll see what happens. But, Stanley Martin owns a big piece of property down in the heart of Crozet now that is slated to become 200 units, and there's a conversation about 2/2 there as well. Mm-hmm. It's a Northern Virginia product that Stanley Martin can bring here. So
can I ask you this question, and then this is going to apply to you. And guys, we will get to Richard Fox's comment from Roslyn Farm. We will get to Keith's comment about the comparison with Portland. And that's a question for you and a comment for you as well. You're getting some props on the feed right now from Christine Jacobs, and Taylor Witt is giving you some love
Nice.
on the show right now. If you guys have a comment or anything you'd like to relay to the fellas, we're happy to do that. County, you've worked with a lot of developers
Sure.
and a lot of builders.
yes.
Building in the Albemarle County, compare and contrast to building in the city of Charlottesville.
Well, from a standpoint of the lots platted and approved, I would say it's easier in the county. If you're taking a raw land through rezoning to get it subdivided, it's probably still easier in the county, but it's not easy by any stretch of the definition. I mean, I'll give you just a quick crazy story. In Lockland Hill, for example, builder builds a beautiful custom home on a pre-platted lot. They've had multiple inspections to get the CO. Finally, they have the final punch list. 2 days later, they're coming back. In the meantime, neighbor next door calls the city and says, I'm not quite cool with the runoff from that mulch bed in front of the house. So different inspector comes out, looks at the house and goes, we're not giving you a CO tomorrow. You need to get a VDOT grade guardrail on the end of this driveway. And so, the house is done. People are planning on closing and moving the next day, and they throw a wrench in it that costs everybody a week and then back off of it and say, no, we were wrong. We really shouldn't have said that. I mean, it sounds crazy that could happen, but it happens all the time.
What do you think, Rory?
I'm not super familiar with the kind of internal workings of the approval process. I think as a whole, though, I think you're probably right that in the county, things that involve the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors or the governing body, as it were, are probably easier and more likely, lower risk than in the city. And I think as a city, we've done a poor job of setting expectations and saying that we're going to be welcoming to new neighbors and that we are a city, we want people to live here. There are benefits of living closely together, and we benefit from having new neighbors around us. And I think if we're going to have a stance that we are welcoming, that we do want neighbors and we don't want a new person coming in to have to push someone else out who is already here, we need to encourage people to build more homes here.
Welcome to the show, David Caron. Welcome to the show, Megan, Elizabeth Welch, Troy Gray. Thank you for joining us. That's the end right there of the second sizzle reel. That's a longer one. That's valuable information. What I like about you is you are a straight shooter. You're very prepared. You speak your mind. I think you're libertarian by mindset. You're entrepreneurial by mindset. I think you don't want to, as an entrepreneur, bureaucracy and roadblocks that you find to be archaic, that impede an enterprising nature of an entrepreneur. I really appreciate that about you. I want to throw this and get out of the way of both you guys. I think it's clear to you first here, Greg. I think it's clear we need more density in Charlottesville, the urban ring in Albemarle County. One of the ways perhaps the density could be solved is, especially if people want to get into the home ownership game. He's right now closing on a townhome in Stonehenge.
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
right around the corner from here.
Sure.
Is the condo townhome concept. The condo townhome concept offers a price point that perhaps is more affordable, offers the convenience of being downtown and close to town. And we have seen you in particular over the last 15 years, apartments converted to condos. I will get out of your way.
Well, let's start with, you're talking condominium ownership is a different type of ownership, right? When you buy a house or a townhome, if you will, either attached or detached, you're not buying the home, you're buying the land. The home just happens to be attached to it. This is the first thing I have to help people understand, because people use townhome and condominium interchangeably all the time. In our market, townhomes are fee simple, just like buying a detached home. You're buying the land, the house is attached to it. Condominium is a very different business model, right? You're not buying any land, right? You're buying the unit, and the unit is described in the instrument, the condominium instrument. For a Hessian Hills example, I remember this because I sold all of them when they were converted. It's from the sheetrock in. And then you have to define who's responsible for the windows and the plumbing and the electric and the wall. But all of those condominium owners collectively own the land, and you pay your dues to maintain the building and maintain all the things you don't own. In some cases, like Hessian Hills, when that was built, it was never intended to be a condo. There's 1 meter to each building of 4, right? So gas has to be prorated and bulk sold and divided up, right? Because they can't get gas.
That's how it is at the villas at Southern Ridge with the water.
This is what happens when you convert structures, right? The utility infrastructure is not in place, so everybody have their own meter for gas, water, or power in some cases. But those dues pay for the taxes on the land, the upkeep and the maintenance of the land, whatever amenities are there. And so if you're thinking about being a condominium owner, you just have to understand the difference in the ownership, and you really have to pay attention to those instruments that govern, because it can vary. And you want to be interested in the financials of that organization, because they're not all run the same, and you don't want to get yourself in a situation where assessments are coming to deal with problems. Like for example, we can talk about Hessian Hills. When Hessian Hills was converted, there's a process you go through at the state level. These are governed by the DPOR, and so they had to rip off all those roofs and put them back on before they could make them condos. There's a certain level of structural integrity and long-term capital expense you have to take care of, because otherwise you could convert an old rundown apartment complex into condos, sell them all, and in 5 years there's no money to replace the roofs, right? So there's a process there. But in general, to go hit a price point under 200 and create housing opportunities for people, there's plenty of demand for that. Closer in opportunities, it creates home ownership opportunities, and hopefully which helps people build equity and maybe grow out of that condo eventually as their lifestyle changes. But yeah.
How do you see, I'm going to throw this to you, and if you want to hit this, hit it. How do you see, for millennials that want to own, and a lot of millennials do not, but for millennials that want to own, how do you see the townhome and condo game helping or assisting the millennials who want to own? Price points lower than, say, a single-family detached where you're looking at, say, $400 in the city or up. And if you're putting 20% down, you're looking at $80K or up, down, if you want 20% and no PMI. How do you see the condos impacting this demographic?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's a really good point, that condominiums are just an ownership structure and don't say anything about what the building form is, right? So we say condos and we think about, Waterhouse and the Holzinger and the Gleason, $1 million plus apartments, high-end, people.
Lewis and Clark.
Yeah, there you go. But at the same time, you have Charlottesville Towers, 2 blocks up North First Street, where you can buy a condo, an apartment for $180,000 right now. Also, I just love the name of that building. You can't imagine, someone coming in trying to call something Charlottesville Towers now. They'd be run out of town. But yeah, I think to your point about people trying to buy, that's exactly what we need to be doing, because we're not in a world anymore where Charlottesville has 10, 20,000 people less, and where you can buy a detached home for, on your starting salary when you're 22 years old. And one way to solve that problem is to just be able to buy a smaller home, whether that's an apartment, whether that's a townhouse, whether that's a townhouse in single-family attached form where you do own the land underneath, or whether it's a townhouse in condominium form. It's really important if we want a new generation of homeowners and to help people become homeowners for the first time, there need to be opportunities available. And if they're all $500,000 plus, then we're not going to get any new homeowners.
Well, you have to understand, though, especially if you're a first-time buyer, the risk element of condominium purchase can be a little different. Because, right, what we learned during the recession is the supply can change overnight in condominium world. You're not buying any land. We talk about the value of real estate long-term being so stable because they're not making any more land. Land is scarce. But if you go back to 2005, Webland Park, 40 condos, Hessian Hills, 180 condos, then Walker Square, River Bend, a couple hundred each. and a couple of JPA and
villas
at Southern Ridge.
Yeah.
So overnight, literally overnight, being a couple of years,
the market was flooded.
We created over 1,000.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then what happens is when if you get into any type of recession type environment or restricted lending, there's a different mortgage instrument and different rules for condominium financing. So right now, look, we're back to a place where condo financing is abundant. You know, in condo world, we talk about the ratio of owners versus tenants. You know, in some cases, investors really find condos attractive, and if you get out of balance with too many tenants in a condo versus homeowners, that can impact the lifestyle and the eligibility for financing and things like that. So you just have to educate yourself. I do think it's a good opportunity for people who otherwise don't want to keep renting and can't afford anything, and that type of housing meets their lifestyle. You just need to know that's different, and you should. The same goes for first-time buyers on the fee simple side. There's an education you need to achieve to make sure you really understand ownership.
Yeah, and I think it really gets at this whole idea of housing, whether it should be a place to live in or an investment that's guaranteed to go up. And for a very long time, we've considered it the latter, and we've let people who own homes kind of dictate governmental policy so that their
investment is protected,
increasing. Yeah. And if you view home ownership or buying an apartment as a locked-in way to guarantee double-digit returns, then you're right, you'll probably be disappointed. If you view it as a way to stop handing over money to the landlord every month and do a little more work on, maintaining your own apartment and building equity, then I think it'll work out probably a lot better. I think there was a great, I don't know if you guys saw it, but the New York Times wrote a great op-ed and interactive piece this weekend about Minneapolis's move to roll back that single-family detached zoning. And there was a line that was something like, planning administrators shouldn't be wealth managers. Our job is not to make sure that everyone who owns a home has it appreciate in value by restricting supply so that there's no one competing with them. It's to make this a good place to live. And if that ends up with home and land prices in particular increasing in value because Charlottesville's a more desirable place to be, then great. Like that's what we want, right? We want Charlottesville to be good. And we, honestly, if we're talking about making housing more affordable and making opportunities for young people to buy homes like they used to in the 50s and 60s, then making prices go down is exactly our goal.
What are you thinking here? That's kind of the opposite of what you would like to hear there as a real estate.
Well, the first thing I'll say is what got us in trouble last time is homes became investments, and they became houses and not homes, and people started. And once they realized their home was going up, you make less deliberate decisions because you figure if it doesn't turn out the way you want to, you sell it in 3 years, you get all your money back and maybe more. And that's the pace of appreciation we're on. And then that led investors into the market who should have never been residential real estate investors. When someone buys a home with no money down as an investment and has negative cash flow and is banking on the appreciation bailing them out, that's a crapshoot. That's a problem.
Exactly.
I'm not sure what I think of what you just said economically and what the responsibilities economically are for these. People have property rights, and people should be allowed, or property owners should be allowed to execute them to their highest and best use. And that's kind of where I am on the topic. And that could lead you in a lot of directions. But at the end of the day, as a realtor, I believe in the rights of property owners and not overburdening them with laws.
Welcome James Watson to the show. Abby Guskin, welcome to the show. Elliot Harding, Willa and Erica Taylor, the owners of Chick-fil-A in Fashion Square Mall, are watching right now. A lot of comments coming in. I want to relay the comments coming in. Guys, we will also get to Crozet Plaza. We'll go a little longer. You guys are crushing it right now. Crozet Plaza, guys, on the docket literally right now with the Board of Supervisors. Frank Stoner is in front of the soups now, talking about what could be a downtown mall coming to Crozet. He's got some intel, and he's going to educate us on that. First, some comments. This is from Richard Fox. I'm going to throw it out there. You guys go anywhere you want. Richard Fox of Roslyn Farm. That's in the urban ring, right in Albemarle County. It's there by Albemarle High School. Richard Fox has this to say: we've had over 3,000 Airbnb guests over the last 3 years. That's a lot.
He's personally.
Yeah, him personally.
Wow.
Over 3,000 over the last 3 years. We've had 0 issues with them. Plus, the supplemental income allows us to maintain 60 acres of open green space within the urban ring. Well, first off, 60 acres of open green space within the urban ring. Good for you guys. Okay. 3,000 Airbnb guests. Anywhere you guys want to go on this topic? Rory, why don't you go first?
On the subject of Airbnb guests?
Yeah, on Richard's topic right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think often Airbnb can be inoffensive. I think a lot of homeowners have concerns about, I don't know, people coming in and out of their neighborhood. Often a lot of the criticisms we hear about Airbnbs are not super dissimilar from
It's the not in my
criticisms of
backyard
renters.
people.
Yeah,
Well,
but
there's
at
a
the same
nuisance
time,
component can happen. I hear all
Sure.
sorts of wild stories and partying and things going on that shouldn't happen next door to me if I don't, if I didn't move in looking to have a hotel next door to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think my big concern about Airbnbs is that it takes housing units off the market. There might be some mitigating things there. If the prospect of an Airbnb makes it easier to get a loan to make an ADU, to build an ADU, that could potentially get more ADUs built. So more can be on the market because, they're financeable and you can always fall back to Airbnb if you need to. So if we ban them, I do have some concerns that it could potentially hurt the housing market. But I think the most important thing is that they're taxed as they should be and as the law says they should be. I think that's kind of an ongoing issue
battle,
in the
right.
city
Yeah.
about whether Airbnb itself should be collecting the taxes or the city should. The benefit of Airbnb collecting the taxes, in theory, is that they'd collect them all. We don't have to rely on
And it's more
self-reporting.
seamless, potentially.
Yeah.
Todd Drivers was quoted about this in the newspaper, Commissioner of Revenue and City. He said, I don't trust Airbnb to collect the taxes. I would rather do it myself because who's to say that they're giving us all the tax revenue?
Yeah, so Todd's letter, I think, was really interesting, and I was previously very much on the Airbnb should do it side, and he raised a lot of good points that I had
agree.
not considered.
Yeah.
Like, if you let Airbnb do it, they just do it as a black box that we have no visibility into. We have no idea where
saying
these
a lump
Airbnbs
sum.
are. Yeah, they just write us a check and
Yeah.
say, that's the right number. We have no way to tell, and that is definitely a concern. So now
Yeah.
I'm pretty undecided on the subject.
I agree with that. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it's a fine model, and people should be allowed to do it where it's appropriate. In some cases, what we're seeing is it's getting a little so popular that everybody thinks they should have the right to rent a room in their house by the night, and I don't agree with that, particularly when there are HOAs or other zoning rules at play that are just being ignored.
We got a good...
Didn't you just say that you supported homeowners having property rights, though? Like, it's their property.
Right,
Shouldn't
but
they have
like-
the right to let someone stay there?
But I moved into Old Trail aware of what the covenants were, and that prevents that. And so you can't have people abusing those covenants without some... It'll get out of control. There's a right place and a wrong place for those Airbnbs, and I think that's what the county's been working on for the last 2 years. And I think calling it homestay is probably better because Airbnb is a brand, right? And
Yeah.
it gets a little confusing to people, but yeah, it's kind of the Wild West out there in some cases.
It really
to be
is
honest
kind
with
of the
you.
Wild West, yeah. Elliot Harding's got a comment. He's considering a run for the 25th Senate District. He's watching right now. He's an attorney in town. Kind of like a PTI crossfire type close to this program here. So you guys just jump in. Elliot Harding, and we will get to this. Elliot Harding says, thoughts, Greg and Rory, on allowing for the upzoning of properties or rezoning to mixed use if developers incorporate affordable housing as a condition, almost a reverse proffer, with the city making the suggested offers and leveraging higher use zoning rather than developer coming to the city with a request.
Yeah, you lost me.
That's a your thoughts on that one, Rory? That is pretty deep, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, the concept is good. When you're upzoning a property, you're creating value by granting rights back to the property owner that you've taken away in the past and increasing their potential for profit, which we should be able to, extract a cut from, and everyone still wins. I think that particular suggestion would run into problems with state law. We're not allowed to ask for proffers as is, and there are going to be some changes to state law in, 12 days now, where we're now allowed to have conversations with the developer again about proffers. And the backstory there is back in 2016, the General Assembly passed a law that basically said you're not allowed to talk about proffers. You're not allowed to bring up the subject of proffers. The developer, if they're so inclined, can, out of the goodness of their heart, offer you things. And that was a goal by the Home Builders Association to stop people from, asking for proffers all the time. Instead, it just kind of destroyed the existence of any sort of productive conversation and ended up with a lot fewer homes being built. So the Home Builders Association went back to the General Assembly last year and said, please repeal this. So now there will be conversations again, but I think, I don't know, there's very specific laws about affordable housing for rezoning in the state code that we have incorporated in our existing code, in 34-12, that basically says if you're rezoning and your building is going to be greater than 1.0 floor area ratio. So if you have a 5,000 foot lot, you'd be building 5,000 gross square feet in your building. Anything above 1.0, 5% of that floor area needs to be affordable housing, or you can pay cash in lieu or build it off-site. So it's a very low number. It's very restrictive, and it's very specific. There really, in our city, aren't a ton of projects that even go over 1.0. I think there have only been 7 or so projects since this was instituted in 2012. It's only raised $2.07 million. I think it's certainly better than nothing. I'd like to see our hands a little bit untied, because I think there are a lot of instances where you can create, a positive sum game where everyone wins, where the developer gets to make more money by building more stuff, which means that consumers benefit because more of them get to get a home or a retail space or whatever, and we can get affordable housing out of the deal. And again, everyone wins, right?
Look, in general, I agree that it should be okay to create more density and require affordable housing to access that density. I think that's a fine concept. It's been executed for a while, but a lot gets lost in the process along the way. When you talk about those proffer laws changing, builders or developers and builders have been paying cash proffers to Albemarle County not to build affordable housing for years, and it's in a lockbox. They have no idea how they can spend it. Organizations like the Thomas Jefferson Community Land Trust could put that
You're
money,
chairman of it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We could put that money into play into the community, and I've tried to access that money, but it becomes a problem when people can't decide.
Is it a slush fund?
I don't know that.
In the city, it goes in the Charlottesville Affordable Housing Fund, which is also separately funded by council. And all those go out to grants to, I think, TJCL, CLT, and Habitat, and a bunch of others.
The city has helped us tremendously in all these organizations, but there's a problem with the fund in the county. They're not sure what they can do with it legally.
Tori Hebner has a comment for us. Start with you on this one. You'll appreciate this. I'm a recent University of Virginia graduate trying to establish a life for myself in Charlottesville. The zoning laws make it illegal to rent with my peers come off as unwelcoming and prejudice. How else am I supposed to save enough income to eventually own my own home? Cutting avocados out of my diet doesn't seem to do the trick. Why don't you start with that topic? Right? Do you know Tori?
I do know Tori, yeah.
Start with that topic.
I guess he's talking about the number of unrelated occupants that can share a single dwelling.
Yeah, Tori lives in an illegal family. It's illegal according to the county.
And what does that mean?
So in the county, in R1 through R4 zones, and R1 means something different in the county. It means 1 home per acre. I want to say Tori's in an R4 zone, which means 4 homes per acre, all detached. But what it means is that in those zones, you can't have more than 2 unrelated people living in a house.
So it's more restrictive there. Is that the limit, or does it get higher in some places?
It gets higher outside of R1 through 4.
Okay.
I'm not sure what other zones there are in the county, to be honest. In the city, it's 4 unrelated, except in university zones, which are 3 unrelated. But the reality is people in their 20s who have graduated college or are in the workforce are all living with roommates and have other people who aren't their family members because people aren't getting married at 21 anymore or at 17 anymore. And you simply cannot buy a starter home at a normal salary for people in their 20s, so people live with roommates. And the county says if you live with more than 1 roommate, you're an immoral person who is in a household unit that shouldn't exist.
I'm immoral. What was I doing in the villas at the time?
I did it when I got out of college.
Me too.
I'm sure it's happening more and more. I guess nobody's enforcing that situation.
How do we enforce that?
So enforcements for zoning are on complaint. So if a neighbor, this is the really scary part, right? If they got in a dispute with their neighbor didn't like them, they could call up the county compliance office
And then
Lisa Green runs the county compliance office. I like to think that Lisa won't kick everybody out of their homes for no reason at all.
When does the landlord have liability, though, if
says.
they have a lease with all these people documented on it as staying there?
Good question. I have one of those. Shit.
Yeah, because he wants to bind everybody to those payments. But if you have a lease that's all yours and you can rent a house and then you actually go and get some roommates, those roommates could just disappear and never be in the conversation. But when the landlord is breaking the zoning laws by putting more people than he's allowed to, it's a different...
I have that situation in both ways. And it was when I bought the villas in 2008, I bought it for myself. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and a den, and I rented 2 of the bedrooms to my buddies for under market rent, $400 each room, and then essentially had a mortgage for $200 a month. Now that property is a rental property, and I'm renting it to essentially 3 guys, 1 guy and 2 other guys, and they're all 3 on the lease. So I'm kind of calling myself out here. You're basically saying that is not against the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Really?
we also live in a college town where renting rooms by the bedroom is commonplace, right? Most people don't know the zoning.
People aren't familiar with the zoning,
no
and
idea.
a lot of things aren't enforced. But that doesn't change the fact that our legal system is structured to say that these households are illegal, that you're not allowed to live that way.
That is so archaic.
That's appalling.
That's appalling.
Yeah.
Especially in a town like Charlottesville.
Yeah.
Because it's a college town.
And there's some great cases about this, great, terrible cases about this. There was one, I think in Palo Alto. No, Palo Alto was the commune. There was one, I think somewhere in the Northeast, where a woman was living with her great aunt who had raised her. And the definition of family in the ordinance was only siblings and parents and grandparents. And the city actually evicted them from their house. And they lost this court case on appeal, where they were saying that great aunt was not a close enough relation and they were not a valid family.
If that was enforced in Charlottesville and Albemarle County, we would have so many people on the street.
I don't think we're going to solve that problem.
I don't think we're going to solve that problem.
We solved that problem by repealing that law.
Yeah.
We're not going to solve it right here.
Right. There you go. Rod Burnell, the real estate agent's watching right now. Marcus Wiley, thank you for joining us. Sandy Fuel, the automotive titan, is watching right now. Jessica Russo of the Russo team, watching right now. Another topic I want to throw to you, one more, and then we're going to do Crozet Plaza, and Harris will end. Crozet Plaza will be the third sizzle reel, the final sizzle reel. This question for both you guys. This is from Keith, and he's made a lot of good points. I'm going to get out of the way about this. He wants to talk about what we're doing on Nassau, what you guys are doing on Nassau with the Thomas Jefferson
Community
Land Trust. And he also wants to get your take on the Thomas Jefferson Community Land Trust and how this could positively impact the city of Charlottesville. Set the stage.
So one of the things we talk about whenever you talk about affordable housing, we always talk about the land, the value of the land being the problem. The second thing we talk about is resources going in to create affordable housing opportunities that only affordable wants, and then that property owner benefits from all the sweat equity and that went into creating that affordable unit in the next sale, and the home's not affordable anymore. Our model, the land trust, separates the land from the improvements. We use our assets to control the land. We sell a 90-year leasehold interest in the improvements, thus removing the value of the land from the price. We then lease the land to the owner for $25 a month. We've created 8 properties to date.
It's brilliant.
Our goal is to create a permanently affordable inventory of houses that can be used over and over by people that are doing this. Maybe you need the home for your entire life because your income's never going to change. But maybe you need the home for 5 to 10 years because you are on a trajectory that will let you start building equity, and gradually it will take you longer to become a homeowner without a program like this in the market. We're fine with both. These houses can serve that purpose. But on Nassau Street, we're trying to show the market that we can actually build homes like this and create the values. We won a grant from the city with Keith's help for $240,000. We bought 4 lots for $30,000 each in the floodplain on Nassau Street that otherwise weren't going to be built on. Habitat actually has bought 4 next door to us. So within a year or so, you'll have 8 new affordable homes on that street and on that stretch of road. But we spent $30,000 to build them out of the floodplain and re-document them with FEMA so you wouldn't need flood insurance and things like that. We partnered with private builder, Bramante Homes. He's building the homes for cost plus a modest overhead. I earned a grant from a local nonprofit to work with Segura Solar to put 5.8 kilowatt solar panel systems on each of these homes at no cost to the purchaser. So normally our model, like when we go and take a home out of the existing inventory, which we have done, we show up and buy the land, they show up and buy the house. We create the affordability by removing the value of the land. In this case, we've removed the value of the land, we've removed the profit from the construction process, and we've added solar panels at no cost. So there's an exceptional value there, and and it's the support of the private sector as well as the public sector that makes this possible. And there are plenty of builders in this market that are interested in affordable housing and interested in doing. They want to be able to build affordable housing and not lose money. They don't need to profit from it, but the way it's set up now, there's no way to achieve the math. For example, if you have an $80,000 lot, like this happened on Vegas Court, and fair market value of the lot was $80,000. And you have to build and deliver a home on it to meet the proffer at $211,000. It can't be done.
Right.
Even if you discounted it down to $50,000 or $60,000, it can't be done. You know, under our model, we tried to do this. We tried to get the county to give us the $60,000 the developer was willing to sell that lot for. Builder was willing to put the entire $211,000 into the improvements at his cost, no profit, no overhead. So at that point, you create something worth $350,000 or $400,000 that sells, and someone gets to live on the math for $211,000. And when they're done with it, you know, one of my fantasies is in this model, since we use the lease to control the land, you know, both the police foundations, you know, I think about all the people that work in this community that have to live in Waynesboro. Police officer are at the top of that list for me. But we could create housing with the resources, our model, the resources from the police officers and the municipalities, to create homes that were just for police officers. And when they're done with it, it goes to the next police officer. I mean, we could control the use of it in that manner with the lease. And there are lots of things we can do. The community land trust model is incredibly versatile. If somebody wanted to build an affordable apartment complex, but we had the assets to control the land under that apartment complex, we just lowered the rent on every apartment because we took the land out of the equation, which is the number one problem with affordability in our market. So we're excited about it. tjclt.org if you want to look up this project and learn more about it.
Keith says you're making the magic work. That was phenomenal right there. Your take on this, and then we go Crozet.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's incredibly important work.
Yeah.
I mean, it speaks to just such a deep need in our community for housing, right? You know, we shouldn't be in a state where you know, workforce housing, what they call, you know, teachers, police officers, firefighters, you know, they should be able to afford a place in the city on their salaries. I mean, there's no reason they couldn't afford it at a reasonable market rate in a non-supply constrained world. We've kind of imposed this problem on ourselves. And I think the work that TJCLT is doing, that others are doing, to create homes that are affordable is absolutely critical in helping us manage this problem.
Welcome, Rena Ringstrom, to the program. You know what? Let's make that the last sizzle reel. My question to Greg, that one trumps the Crozet. I mean, we'll talk Crozet tomorrow. That was so damn good.
Thank you.
The land trust was so good, all the way through Rory's answer right there. I think the community needs to understand what's happening. It sounds complicated, but it's not as complicated as it actually is.
Well, I'll put this out there.
So good.
On July 10th, we're going to have a little hard hat tour. We're going to invite supervisors, council people, stakeholders, partners in the community, and we're going to do a little hard hat tour at like 7:30 in the morning. It's going to be breakfast on Nassau Street or coffee at Nassau Street, and you can talk to other members of the board, the builder, people who are involved, maybe walk through these homes and see them. I'm optimistic that here in the next week or so, I'll have about 2 or 3 of them committed. We've got people in the process.
I love it. So that's the end of the sizzle reel right there, the hard hat tour. All right, close on this note. And we're going to tomorrow show Sean Tubbs, who was previously of Charlottesville Tomorrow. He's fantastic in covering land use and development. He's now of the Piedmont Environmental Council. He's going to join us tomorrow to talk about this topic. Sina McGill, who made it through the Democratic primary, and she surprised me because I thought Brian Pinkston, Michael Payne, and Lloyd Snook would make it out of the Democratic primary. We'll give props to Sina. She's going to join us on the show tomorrow for a good roundtable like this. This is the final topic. Harris is scowling at me because we're going past the time, creating more work for him. I'm sorry, Harris. Last topic, I promise here. Throw it to you. You have the information. You and I spitball off what he's saying. Crozet Plaza, Frank Stoner's property in the heart of downtown Crozet, probably in front of the Board of Supervisors right now.
Probably.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of conversations in Crozet about this and elsewhere and on this show. So I've been talking to Frank the last couple of days to get the latest on it. You know, he's been planning that for years. Here's a resource for you if you're really interested in this, because it's actually kind of hard to find online since it's been in progress so long and there's been so many iterations of the plan. But we have an organization in Crozet called the Downtown Crozet Initiative, and they have a website. I think it's downtowncrozetinitiative.com. And on the far right, they have a menu item that's called Resources. And under that, they have an item that's called MRA Presentations. MRA is the organization that designed the latest version of the Lumberyard property or Crozet Plaza. I'm not sure what the ultimate name will be. But you know, this property will be 250,000 square feet of commercial. in about 200 residences, and it will have a significant common space component with for example, the developer describes it as a European piazza. We'll have to look that one up. But it's like this, it's perfect for a gathering of 50 people or 1,500 people. And so it'll be a place for people in Crozet to get together and do concerts and things of that nature, surrounded by, phase one is going to be mixed use, retail, restaurant, and some apartment component. At some point, there'll be residential opportunity, more of a single-family opportunity. His biggest hurdle left in the gauntlet of trying to get something like this done is VDOT. He describes it as VDOT is conflicted between trying to move cars fast and in a pedestrian-friendly way. And so there's some important connection roads, Old Trail to downtown. Jarman's Gap has been redeveloped. You can ride your bike or walk on a sidewalk from Gray Rock, Jarman's Gap, anything out that quarter, right to downtown. On the other side, it's still disconnected, right? You have downtown, you have the lumber yard, then you have a little break, you have Parkside Village, and you have Glenbrook and that area being developed. Well, as that gets developed, there just needs the piece of the road that goes with this plaza to finally connect it. So what that road's going to be ultimately and what that road's going to cost is his last obstacle. But referencing the meeting that's going on today, whenever there's a major component, whether, for a long time, the conversation was about whether or not this place needed parking, a parking deck of some capacity because of the lack of parking in Crozet. But this common space component, there's also often a public contribution to this. And Frank's before the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors this afternoon to get a final decision on funding to help with the public common space component of this plaza.
I'm super excited for this. I'm so excited, and he's right. The link is downtowncrozetinitiative.com. I'm looking at it now. Colleen Tyler, the real estate agent's watching right now. A number of your colleagues at Nest are watching right now. We encourage you to tune into Friday's show. I'm going to get your take on this here, and we'll close on that. Friday's show, Real Talk, the insider's guide to real estate in Central Virginia, which is powered by the Yes Team. Keith Smith and I will talk with Michael Payne, who is a front runner to win a spot on City Council. Friday morning at 10:15 a.m. on the I Love CVille network. Rory, the show is yours.
Yeah, and I'll start off by saying I don't really know that much
You're a city
about
guy.
Crozet. Yeah, I live in this little bubble here, and Sean
You
will
should
come
come
on
out and see
tomorrow
us
talk
sometime.
about- Yeah, I mean, I go to Crozet Pizza occasionally.
You should, the rooftop
now
and
we've got our
smoked
own.
are fantastic.
Smoked.
Yeah, they used to be down here, and then they defected. Also, shout out to Sam's Hot Dog Stand, Trey over
Love
there.
it, yeah.
Order on their website, Foodio.
Nice plug right there. How about a plug for your business over there? Should we
I
get
brought
up-
you guys ice cream. You're not even eating it.
We have ice cream.
Oh, I'm going to load up on ice cream right after this.
Crozet
no worries.
Creamery, guys. Crozet Creamery.
But I think from a high level view, I look often back at these 2011 projections, population projections for the area from AECOM, the big engineering firm, and it was for the Rivanna Water District just to project demand. And in the city, it shows kind of modest growth, 50% growth. 43,000 to 63,000, 20,000 extra people within city limits. And then for the county, it shows we're over doubling. It's starting at 57,000. We're adding, 65,000 people just to the urban ring around Charlottesville. If you can get that graphic on screen, Harris sent that to you a little earlier. I don't know. And then, Crozet is tripling. It's going from 5,000 to over 13,000. And we have all these people who want to come to Charlottesville and move near here because we've got jobs, we've got a great urban core, we've got a downtown, and people want to be here. And we've not let them live in the city, and we've kind of pushed them out to this sprawl. And now at this point, we've created so much sprawl that in this bedroom community over in Crozet, where everyone commutes every day, they're now starting their own urbanism and their own little downtown core because we've said that they can't live here. And I find that really remarkable that, for all we talk about caring about the environment and urbanism and the importance of being a city, that, tens and tens of thousands more people will be living in the county, out in the sprawl, out in this greenfield land, not like that, but all this greenfield land that's being, torn, raised and leveled and homes built because we're afraid to let people be our neighbors here in the city.
You want to add anything to that?
That's just unfortunate. I do see that, it's hard to live in the city.
Yeah.
It's hard to get development. We talked about all these things, and of course it's going to go somewhere else. There's tremendous demand to live here and raise families and live in the shadow of the University of Virginia. I'm a Hokie, but I love living here, and I talk to people every day. They leave here, at some point they want to come back.
Mm-hmm. Greene County, the new version of Crozet. Look at what's happening in Greene County.
Great example. 168 townhomes approved by their board of supervisors last week, just over the Albemarle line.
Yeah.
So, for all we talk about traffic on 29 and the John Warner, if you don't want traffic, you need people already here near the jobs.
He's responding well to you right there, Harris Tolber.
There we go.
Yeah, Harris Tolber, my boy. Crozet 20 years ago is Greene County today. So watch what happens north of Albemarle County in GC. You guys crushed it. This was so fun. So fun. Smart dudes right here made us look good today on the I Love CVille show. We will archive the show in totality on ilovecville.com. Again, we will talk with Sean Tubbs and Cena McGill tomorrow in a roundtable format to talk about Crozet Plaza and what's happening at the Board of Supervisors meeting right now with Crozet Plaza and its developer, Frank Stoner. We will talk about Cena and her win, her advancement in the Democratic primary, and what she's going to do between now and November 5th, the general election, to potentially get a seat on council. 3 seats up for grabs. Charlottesville's at a crossroads right now, and those 3 seats will undoubtedly determine the future of Charlottesville. Remember, Heather Hill and Mayor Walker remain on council. I'm Jerry Miller. Let's give some props to Harris Tolber, the director, who's very patient for helping us here. Judah Wickower, Lauren Linsky, and it's the I Love CVille show where we feature the best of Charlottesville. We close the show the same way every single time. We ask you to embody the golden rule. We don't make it about religion. We do make it about treating others how you want to be treated yourself. And if you treat others how you want to be treated yourself, it will have a positive viral impact across our community. And I think Charlottesville needs that more than ever. Have a good afternoon, guys. Take care. Good work.
Thank you.
It was fun. You were really good.
That was,
hey,
Thanks, Jerry.
yeah, good.
Yeah,
we
Thank
covered
you.
a lot.
We did.
Yeah.
We really did. And we got to get some ice cream.
Yeah.
I'll definitely
Dig
have
in.
some ice cream.
Dig in.
Thank
Let
you.
me put it out there.
You were great, man. I'll reach out to you again.